there's 16 of us. We meet around the Sabbath. We do rituals. We're going to dance around the fire and things like that.
Welcome to Witch Talks, the series for spiritual seekers, witches, and enlightened souls. I'm Hana the Suburban Witch, professional tarot reader, astrologer, and witch, and I hope you're ready to get up close and personal with your favourite witches. Oh, well, hi there, stranger. Welcome back. We are at the first episode of season 3. How flippin' exciting. And I am so glad that you are here with me today. Right off the bat, I'm just going to let you know that today's chat is about circle facilitating and holding a circle, running circles, that sort of a thing. And our guest today is Rachael Rose, who specifically works with women's circles. So there's going to be a lot of talk around women's circles in general and the word woman thrown around. But if you are not a woman and you do not identify as a woman, there is still a lot of really useful stuff in here that you can take away with you. Holding a circle, whether that's what I do, which is psychic development circles, a women's circle, a men's circle, a Sabbath circle, a full moon circle, whatever the bloody hell you please, these skills are all transferable. But as I said, Rachael, our guest, specifically works with women's circles, and she's going to tell you why as well. We also chat a little bit around running a small business, especially as parents of young children and folks who are neurodivergent, and all the lovely things that come along with all of that. And I just know you're going to get a ton of useful information from this episode. So buckle up, Buttercup, as this episode starts now. In this episode, I am chatting with Rachael Rose. Rachael is a mother, a doula, a business mentor for mothers, a storyteller and course creator, but mostly today we're going to talk about her work as a women's circle facilitator. Rachael also hosts her very own podcast called Together. She has a goal to inspire 10,000 women to start their own women's circles and is passionate about the magic of bringing women together and sharing their stories. So let's get into it. She is joining us via Zoom all the way from Ulladulla in New South Wales. Hey, Rachael, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I'll just say it's Ulladulla, but I loved that pronunciation. It was beautiful. No, it's great. Yeah, we just moved here a year ago. It's just such a beautiful place on the South Coast and started women's circles 3 weeks after I moved here. So
Amazing.
Yeah, it's just the best thing you can do to meet new people in a new community.
Agreed. Did you start like your own one straight up, or did you join another one first?
I started my own because I put the call out there and I said, where's the local women's circle at? And there wasn't one at the time. And I had a bunch of people say, can you please start one? So yeah, 3 weeks in, amidst like unpacking boxes, we were living at my mother-in-law's. I'm like, I'll start a women's circle, sure.
Did it go well?
It did. I had 17 people join the first circle that I put out down here.
That's an amazing turnout. Is it? I mean, it's south of Sydney, isn't it? Ulladulla.
Yes.
Yes. And is it a big area?
There's about 300,000 in the total region.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's totally wrong. That's Wollongong, where I used to live. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Probably like 50,000 or something. Like it's a regional place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's still an amazing turnout. As someone who hosts live classes, it can be really tricky to get a lot of people to come to a class. So to a class or a circle, I suppose. So I think that's wonderful. And it speaks to the need that people have to meet in that way. Since today we're chatting about all things women's circles, I wanted to ask if you could share what a women's circle is and what it is not for those who may not be familiar with the term.
Yeah, so it can have this kind of scary sounding edge to it, or people think that it's a secret club where women do all sorts of magical rituals, and that is true to an extent. But the way that I talk about women's circles is that it is what it sounds like. It's women gathering with intention in a circle formation. So that literally means like you sit in a circle. And then the topic, the theme, when you meet, that is totally dependent on the facilitator. So it depends on their passion and their interests and what they're wanting to circle around. But you can have women's circles that are seasonal circles, so celebrating the equinoxes or the Sabbats, or meeting around the full moon or the new moon or the dark moon. Or you can have none of that, and it can be around meeting around a topic like motherhood or matrescence or pregnancy or birth. So it's basically taking the idea of coming together in a circle formation, including some grounding in practices and some rituals, which can be super simple. They don't have to be a multi-step process. It can be as simple as you light a candle when you introduce yourself. So you're calling yourself present into the space and you're placing a candle in the middle of the altar. Or it can be group breathing together, or it can be singing together, or it can be dancing together. It's different than, say, going to meet girlfriends for a cup of coffee in a cafe. There is more intentional slowing down. There's kind of more structure to the day. And it's this opportunity to fill up your own cup, to reconnect with your own brain and your own body, and then be in the presence of other women. So it can be many, many things. And I tell other facilitators that if you're particularly passionate about one area, like, you can create a whole circle around it. There have been women that have started circles that are for mothers of children with additional needs. There are circles for pregnancy loss or abortion circles. There are mystical and magical circles that really go into deeper rituals or spiritual esoteric sides of things. It can be so many different things. I guess when you ask what it isn't, it's not everyday chit chat. It's not a catch up without a beginning or an end. It's marking out and carving out some sacred time to meet. It's sharing with a purpose, and sharing in a way where, when we have the sharing circle component, it's trying to practice the deepest listening that you ever have, and getting it wrong and watching your mind wander and coming back. And it's allowing other women to speak without interrupting them, without cross-talking, without immediately going in to offer your own story or your own piece of advice as a way to resonate with that person. It's allowing women to share their stories and to be heard in a completely different way than just your everyday conversation. So yeah, I want to encourage everyone that it's not as scary as some might think it may be. It's definitely intimidating for the first couple of times you go along. Like, I've had women who have watched my circles and me advertising them for a year before they finally get the courage to come along. But then most of the time, women feel like it's just something that they remember, whether they've done it in this lifetime or lifetimes before, or it's something that they know that women have been doing since women were women, that it feels this recognition, that it feels like, oh yes, this feels right to be able to meet in this way and to honor the seasons and the cycles in our body and our stories. There's something very normal about it once you actually can get over the nerves of going along to something, usually by yourself as well.
Yeah, I've been to my fair share of new moon and full moon and Sabbath style circles. And I remember the very first new moon circle that I ever went to. And as I rocked up at this random house in a random state I had just moved to, the lady who answered the door, she literally said, "You are so brave coming here. Well done." And I was like, "I am so brave." And then I was like, "Wait, is this a dangerous thing? Should I not have been this brave?" And I was like, no, that felt like a good brave. And that was that was my favorite. So they were wonderful, wonderful group to meet with. And it's funny, when it came time for me to run my own psychic development circles, I was way more nervous than ever going to a circle. Like, it was like, oh no, now, how do I actually do this? What if I get it wrong? And I actually took your very first class, I think you did ages ago. It was ages and ages on how to run a circle. And you should see the notes I took on that class, like pages and pages, but it made me feel way more prepared when it came time to finally like sit down. And this was a Zoom circle. This wasn't even an in-person one. So I feel like it's slightly less scary. but I just wanted to make sure that I had some parameters and rules around it. And one thing that really stood out to me, and it's something that I have kept with the way I just deal with people in general and deal with my children even, and I think it's a really beautiful thing, is you had mentioned if someone starts crying when they're telling their story, don't grab the tissue box, don't pat them, like rub their back, don't touch them, don't interrupt that process, let them just cry. Because by giving the tissues, you're saying, here you go, stop crying. And I thought that was like, I'm even getting shivers now. I thought that is like, yes, our intentions are not always like, here, stop crying. But that can be how it is taken. And I've brought that into the way I mother, the way I parent, the way I'm with my friends. I think that was a really crucial takeaway from your class. And I think that's a wonderful way that you do facilitate your circles. Do you have any other rules like that that you sort of lay down at the start, some like groundwork that you let everyone know is what not to do and what to do whilst you're in the circle space?
Yeah, for sure. So my circles have always had boundaries and guidelines that I share before we get into the sharing circle. And I do that to create this sense of, I want to say the word safety, but I also want to caveat that with, we can do our best to create safety, but it's also safety's in the body of the beholder. So everyone's going to come to circle with different life experiences and different ways of being in the space. And so we do our best, but we've also got to get that feedback from the women in the room. But the sharing boundaries and guidelines, they set expectations. They help the newcomers who are like, what do I say? What do I do? What's going to happen next? Is this going to get weird? Is everyone going to take their clothes off? Are we going to start howling? Like what, And so it's also like just to set the idea that it's normal if your mind wanders. It's normal if you find listening actually quite hard. It's normal if you spend half the circle rehearsing your story. But can we try not to do that because we want to be present for the other woman and her sharing? So yeah, some of these include when someone is talking, the floor is theirs. So I usually have an item to represent that as well. So whether it's a bowl, a crystal, they're holding something in their hand, and when they're talking, we're all listening and we're not interrupting. It is not appropriate to interject someone else's story. If they do show emotions, it's totally fine. It's welcome. They don't have to. It's also not a rule that you have to cry. But I often find that a lot of women do because it's a place where they actually get to express those emotions and not have them shut down. So when someone is crying or taking a moment, we're not going into that immediate rescuing position, which we might do in friendship groups, which is well-intentioned and full of love. But when we go and put our hand on someone, that person goes out of the experience and they're looking around the room, they're realizing that there's 17 eyes on them, and they suddenly stop themselves or they apologize for having emotions. Other rules that I have are just around self-responsibility and community responsibility. So I don't know your needs. If you're getting too hot in the circle, if you're getting overwhelmed, if something's shared that you need just a moment to process, there's a veranda, go outside, use the bathroom, open the curtains, put the fan on. Like there's ways that you need to look after yourself in circle as well. And then the community responsibility piece is that while circle can be just this magical place where we can come and we can share things we might not share elsewhere, it is also not the first port of call that you might process something hugely traumatic in your life, where you're just going and you're basically offloading it and expecting the circle to be able to hold that. So while circle can feel therapeutic, it's not therapy. And the facilitator's often not a mental health psychologist unless they are, but they have different parameters and guidelines for their own circles if they are. So yeah, like I've heard sometimes in the online world that, circles are just this place where you kind of go and trauma offload or trauma dump. And that's not how I run my circles. I certainly want people to feel safe and comfortable to share who they are and what they've experienced. But we always have to be mindful that everyone there has families to return to, lives to return to, and we've got to know our scope as well as facilitators. So in the back of my mind, I always have my list of referrals. So if things are mentioned in a space and they're beyond what the circle can hold, then I follow up with a referral to other practitioners or colleagues that I know, or doulas or birth workers, or whoever I feel is appropriate for that particular sharing point. I just know that, we're not meant to work or live without a village. And so sometimes that means like giving people, other points of contact that may support them in whatever they need to process.
Absolutely. I actually found you and your content it was just after the birth of my first child, leading up to the birth of my second child, at some point in that middle hazy range, because I was going to this, I had some birth trauma, and I was going to this art therapy group that was run by our enhanced maternal health nurses. And so it was a free art therapy, and it was essentially a women's circle where we came with our children. We all sat and did the sing along and make sure they're all happy. And then the nurses would look after them whilst we went with a therapist and did art therapy in circle and would share around that. But it was, as I said, with a licensed psychologist actually, to help hold those really heavy traumatic things. But even so, there was a limit to that in a way. And, one of the girls was at that limit, and they needed to safely bring her out of the space and give her, extra resources in a way that wouldn't also harm us from hearing some of those stories as well. So it was really interesting watching that happen and seeing that, there is limits, even when it is in a place where there is a licensed therapist there. And so that was sort of my first, they didn't call it a circle. It was an art therapy group, but it was totally a circle. And then when I was planning my own home birth with my second child, I was, oh my gosh, your beautiful poetry of your birth and your birth photos and your raw sharing was what drew me to you. And then you started sharing about these circles. And it was just sort of this missing piece as well. Like, yes, that like community piece we all need. And of course, I was finding that during COVID when we didn't have that, it was all ripped away. So that's when the online part came for me with the psychic development circles. So it was very, very lovely to find you and to have, I guess, some of that information and that yearning acknowledged as well, because I do think a lot of us go, yeah, I do want to sit with people, and I don't want it to be this big deal of having to, like, I don't know, put myself out there so much. If it's something that I can go to, it feels a little bit less pressure, even if it is scary the first time. Now, I do have a question, because I fully believe this, but you run lots of circles. Do you think there is magic that happens when people meet in this way?
Yes, 100%. I mean, I've been running them for 6 years now and attending them for over 10. And the coincidences, the synchronicities that you see in circle, like a woman might share. I have one example where she started to express emotion and say how lonely she had been after becoming a mother, and felt really isolated, and was at circle to meet new people and to establish connection. And then the person next to her started sharing, and then after the circle happened, they lived on the same street and they did not know that. And things like that just happen a lot of the time. But also there's an energetic field that I feel that is created at a circle, and that's, the shared co-regulation of women and the building of oxytocin. Like, you can feel slightly high when you're in the space and then when you leave. So as a facilitator, I need to do some grounding techniques for myself after a circle, releasing techniques, because otherwise I can feel quite like buzzy and frazzled, and sleep can be quite interesting the nights of circles. So like the dreamland and the dreamscape can be different. And, I was quite a hardcore skeptical. I would say I was not spiritual, 10 years ago. No, I'm not spiritual. No. And then I get into women's circles of all things, thinking that I'm, really there for community and connection. But the more that I've attended, there is just something so magic to it. And even it can be as simple as the magic of women reconnecting to their bodies. So seeing women come to circle who are on, what's the word? Hormonal birth control, and have never considered a different way, never even considered the concept of tracking your own cycle and connecting with the seasons of your own cycle. And then coming to one of my circles where the topic is menstruation and the power of menarche and sharing menarche stories, and then just them seeing like, oh, that could be a possibility. And then they keep coming to circle, and then suddenly an IUD is out and they're connected to their blood for the first time in 30 years. So there's that kind of magic too that happens. Or there's magic in women coming really shy and coming not being able to share. So they might say a sentence and then that's it. And then a year of coming to circle and they're sharing the most, the loudest. They've reclaimed that voice. They feel really confident. But it's not just happening when we're together. They're suddenly having conversations with their partner that they've never had. They're speaking up for themselves at work. So it's just this like reclaiming of our stories and our wisdom that kind of ripples out into the everyday as well.
I think it's beautiful. The ones that I've been to, there's always been something magical, something that I come home and go, wow, that was so cool, regardless of what type of circle it was, even if it's the art therapy one or a new moon circle, or there's this wonderful lady who I've had on the podcast before, Dr. Danielle Arabina, and she does host Sabbath circles. So, like a Samhain circle, and we all sit there, and it is magic. It's so much fun as well. I really cherish and look forward to those. So I wholeheartedly agree. Magic.
I was
time.
doing this ritual with some girlfriends at a circle, and it was a blood ritual. So we were offering our menstrual blood to a tree and saying a prayer of sorts. And I was nowhere near when I should be bleeding. And we did the ritual, and then I went to the bathroom and I started bleeding. So spontaneous period, 7 days prior to when it was due. I'm always like clockwork. And then it went away the next day. So it was just like womb saying, hello, liked that. And then retreating. And it's those kind of things where you just go, I can't really explain that apart from, it was very powerful, and my womb had a story to share about that.
Yeah. And I love the power of when we are sharing stories, and afterwards when you reconnect and the circle is, I guess, ended, and you can sort of have a bit more free conversation, and they go, oh my gosh, the thing that you said here, I needed to hear that. And someone goes, oh my gosh, the thing that you said was what I needed to hear. And everybody resonates with something that they really needed to hear. Like we all were supposed to be there to hear that little takeaway from that person who wasn't going to share, and then they shared. Like it's really, really special. Another thing I wanted to mention is you make some beautiful altar centerpieces, I guess, in the center of the circle. I would call it an altar. You did mention the word altar earlier. Did they always start out like that? Are they, what is your thought process, and what is the intent behind these beautiful centerpieces that you place in the center of these circles?
So on circle day, it's always a Sunday these days. That's when I run my circles. My circles are in the afternoon, but I tend to call all of Sunday circle day because I like to prepare. And so usually that means taking a little bit of time in the garden and just collecting some herbs or some flowers. And because I am running seasonal Sabbath circles, so I've got a next circle this coming Sunday. I'm always thinking, well, what is flowering at the moment? What makes most sense to be represented in the middle of the circle? I'm not going to go to the shops and buy gerbras because gerbras are pretty. Like, what actually represents the colors of the season that we're in? We're approaching autumn at the time of recording this. So, I'm going to be looking for browns and oranges and decaying leaves and trying to mimic the death, birth, rebirth cycle that happens in nature as well. And for me, it's something that creates a little bit of awe and wonder when you walk into the room. And then I know as someone that goes to other people's circles, you feel, oh, they did this for us. Like they took the time to make this pretty and special. And I also say, I have my argument that, it's not the altar that makes a special women's circle, it's the women, and that's true. But also I find it quite cathartic as a process, a way to set my intention for the circle. I arrive earlier, I'm there by myself when I'm setting it out. I'm listening to music and laying it out. And it always just is created on the day. I don't pre-plan necessarily like what the spiral will look like or what it's going to eventuate to. And so there's a bit of magic in that process as well. But yeah, I might include like pumpkins from the garden because we've got a permaculture garden as well. So I've always got access to fruits and vegetables, or maybe I'll look up the associated goddesses with the cycle that we're in and make reference to the colors or her symbology and put that in the altar. So some things are known and the people will walk in and go, oh, okay, there's pumpkins. Okay, that makes sense for harvest. And there's other things that I'm just putting in because they're like secret little messages that I'm just infusing into the space. And they have their own meaning for me.
Do you use crystals or oracle cards or anything like in your altar as well?
Yeah, so I always use cards. I love Jane Hardwick Collins' The Wheel of the Year cards, so I'll often have that in a centerpiece, and then other ones just depending on the topic or theme that we are talking about. Crystals. It's funny, I always joke that I don't know enough about crystals to include them for meaning, but I always reach for certain crystals more so on others. So maybe there's something happening there that I'm not even aware of. But I always have a rose quartz to hold on to during the sharing circle. So there's sprinkles of that, but it's not really my like main source of inspiration or knowledge.
Yeah, rose quartz is a beautiful, soft and gentle healing crystal. It's one of my favorites. And for everyone listening, it is, if you really want to connect with rose quartz, my favorite way to do that is with it in the bath because it is water safe. It's from the quartz family. Plonk a huge raw piece in the bath with you, and on a full moon, oh my gosh, it is glorious. There's self-love in there. It's a wonderful crystal for a circle,
Beautiful.
especially. Now, I do want to discuss the elephant in the room, which it's probably here. So I know that there are people who are probably listening going, what about men's circles? Which is always what happens. I know there are lots of other forms of circles that are gender inclusive. And, I've been to many moon circles with men, women, trans men, non-binary folks. And I know you've chosen specifically to focus on those who identify as women. Is there a reason behind that? What is it that you felt called to doing that specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's, I was running circles back in Wollongong, and then my partner started to run circles at my encouragement, saying, can you run some circles for men? And he tried really hard for 18 months to get those circles off the ground, and he played around with language as well. He played around with because it was for parenting circles. So he had, originally it was like parents and carers, and that didn't quite make the mark. And then he changed it to the Gentle Dads Club. And it was like pulling teeth trying to get men to come along to those spaces, even though almost every woman that attended my circle was saying, please, we need these spaces for our partners. We need these spaces where men can gather and talk. But it just didn't really work. And so I just decided that I can only do so much in my backyard at the time, which was I could have 10 to 12 people in the space. And so I knew that the topics that I wanted to talk about were going to be things like the menstrual cycle, birth, pregnancy, and there was a certain way that I could talk about it and embody and share my knowledge. But I knew that there are circles for everyone, and that's why I then branched into the circle facilitator training. Now, while it is women-centered language in that it says together women's circle facilitator training, I have had non-binary people go through the training, and I have had people who are specifically creating circles for non-binary people. And I love that. And I want that because I think the representation of who is running the circle matters as well. And so I didn't want to pretend that that was my zone of genius. That's where I knew or could speak the best. It was for people that identified with certain language around wombs and birth, and I just wanted that to be okay for my little slice of what circles I was running. And so I love that with broadening it out and creating a training. Now there are people all over the world creating circles that are much more diverse and representative. I've got women and people of color in the training who are running circles specifically for people of color. And again, that's not something I was going to specifically advertise as my circles as a white Caucasian woman. So yeah, it's just allowing myself to go, I can only do so much, and yet I want to encourage everyone to step into their own magic and their own passion and represent their own people as well.
And I think that's a very important point, not running a circle for an identity that you don't identify with. I think that would definitely not be right. But also when you are using a lot of words that could be perhaps even triggering for people who are non-binary or have a different gender identity, and you're using words like womb and things, letting them know upfront that that's the terminology that you have and this might not be the right fit, that I think that is important as well, so we don't do harm as well. But I mean, I've taken that, as I said, that class that you did, and then I took your sell the effing course class as well, which I loved. Thank you. And I mean, that was for everybody. So I think you've done a good job of being like, this is my niche, this is what I do and what I love to do. And then these skills specifically are for everybody, for anything with what you're doing. Like I'm not selling a women's circle course. I'm selling psychic divination and an ex-vangelical course. And that class was super helpful for me. So I think it's great to have the both sides of it as well. Another question I wanted to ask, especially because you're meeting with women under the Sabbat, would you call your circles a coven of sorts? Do you ever use that terminology, or does it feel separate from that?
I don't use that terminology myself, just because, yeah, it's been a personal journey of like connecting to my spirituality, and even the word witch, like there's still some tension there for me. Even though like I love reading about her story, I've read books about the witch trials, I've immersed myself into it. I feel quite like enraged and powerful learning about it. But no, I don't call it a coven, although there's 16 of us. We meet around the Sabbats and we do rituals. We're going to dance around a fire and things like that. But for my circles and also for my training, I have tended to use more plain language, because what I found was women who were attending my circles, it was often the very first circle they'd ever attended. So they're not immersed in this world. They're not really connected to their spirituality. They're just like, they've got this inkling and they're like, I want to find some people who want to talk about this stuff. I want to understand more about this, but I feel, I don't know, intimidated by it. And so noticing the trend that every circle I ran, at least half the room it was their very first circle. I wanted to keep appealing to that audience because I wanted to keep encouraging those people who might identify as straighty 180, corporate girlies, whatever. I wanted them to come along to circle. I wanted them to experience what I had been experiencing for years. And so I say that I'm the gateway drug. I'm like, that first taste. And then often we'll circle together, and I do really focus my circles on community and connection. And so I'm encouraging friendships between circles. I'm encouraging meetups. I want them to really become each other's village per se. And then they often go on and do weirder and wilder things with other facilitators, and they'll seek them out because they've been activated from that first circle. And then they're wanting to learn all sorts of things, and they're wanting to tap into their psychic abilities or their spiritual abilities. And so they'll go seek out those other facilitators. And so again, that's me just acknowledging that's my role in this. It's it's not in psychic divination. Like, I don't know enough about that to even begin, but it might be having someone come to my circle and then they go and seek out you so they can further study. And likewise, I use the same plain language with my training, because I was noticing that people were joining who hadn't even attended a circle before, but they wanted to start one in their community. And so I just wanted to start from kind of a blank space to allow people to make circles whatever they want. So if they go through the training and they are a hardcore witch or even an underground witch, and they come out the other side and they're like, I want to call my circles a coven, they know that they can do that because they've done my training that certainly gives them permission at every single step for it to represent who they are and what they believe in.
Yeah, I love that. And I am not surprised that you attract so many people who are new to this, because your whole energy is so friendly and welcoming and safe. Like, everything that you put out, you're just like, oh yeah, I know I can be nervous and be okay being nervous if I'm there with you. I feel like that's the vibe. You're like, yes, come, my little birdie, I will help you. And even
Come
in your
and be awkward and
yes,
stumble on your words and forget where you are. And, because I've been doing this as a mother. And so I've been doing this through postpartum brain changes. I've been doing this through identity shifts and changes. I've been doing this as someone juggling stay-at-home motherhood and starting a business. I'm awkward. I'm uncomfortable. I get nervous. Like, I was nervous coming on today, and I just share all of that because that's probably going to be pretty common for most people in starting something new. And so if they can see me sweating, then they might feel, less alone.
Yeah. I honestly, I appreciated it so much when in one of those classes, that first class where you said, I am very nervous, I'm very anxious, I'm very sweaty right now, and I'm doing it anyway. And I thought, isn't that powerful? That is so freaking powerful. I need to do that more often, because
Yeah.
this is recording, this would be the 61st podcast episode.
Wow.
Just to give everyone a TMI, I still have a very nervous run to the bathroom about 10 minutes before every single podcast.
Yeah.
And this has been years and it still happens. And if my husband's home, he's like, all right, do you have enough time? Are you okay in there? Do I need to start the Zoom for you? Because it's just my body I get nervous, and that's normal. And I don't usually acknowledge it, but I love that you acknowledge it because it makes me feel like that's an okay thing to do as well. So I love that. Have you been searching for a safe space to connect with other witches and grow and develop and learn together? The Suburban Witches Society will bring you knowledge and friendships that are spiritually aligned, plus a whole heap of fun. You will get access to our private community Facebook group and group chat, which that chat pops off. There are monthly group calls, you get a reading with me, you can do Q&A, and we all just chat and hang out together. It's like a slumber party. You are welcome to wear your pajamas. This is not like fancy influencer witches on a Zoom call. We are very real over here. You can take a peek at behind the scenes episodes of the podcast that are uncut, and you get access to them before anybody else. There's a resources section where you get PDF downloads, you get access to classes that are not available to the public. Here is what one of our members, Brandy, has to say about her experience in the Suburban Witches Society. Signing up to the society has been the best present to myself. My witchy knowledge has exploded, and I've forged some of the deepest friendships in this group. So come and join Brandy and everyone else in the Suburban Witches Society, meet your new witchy best friend, and get a little bit closer access to yours truly as well. I hope to see you there. What is, I guess, one of your favorite rituals that you do, or favorite things that just makes it really, really special for you? Is there a particular practice or rule or just something that everybody does every circle that makes you go, oh, this is the good part?
It's a very simple one, and it's one that I learned in sitting in a few circles with Jane Hardwick Collins. So I give credit to where I learnt this very, very simple practice. And it is when someone has shared, after they've finished, they will say, these are my words. And then in unison, the group will say, I hear you. And then we move on to the next person. And that's the acknowledgement that we were there, we were holding space for their story, we were witnessing them and being present, and we're not going to interject or give anything else, like, we hear you. You could also say, I see you, or something of the effect. But there's, I don't know, the joint voices saying that at the same time. And I do this in online circles as well. So it's actually a really beautiful practice for anyone running online circles, because when you're not sharing space with people, the energetics is different. It's still wonderful that we can connect online, and some online circles have been a lifesaver to me. But when someone shared, if everybody unmutes themselves, if they were on mute on a group Zoom call, then all together you say, I hear you. And you're just bridging that space and time, and you're feeling like you're right next to each other. But yeah, it's usually just people get some goosebumps hearing it, and you feel that. So if, 10 people in circle are saying, I hear you, then you go, oh, this really is a different space where we are being listened to in a different way than happens in ordinary reality.
Yeah, I think that would also heal so many wounds for a lot of people of not being heard or being spoken over, or like, oh, talking again, like, that sort of a vibe that a lot of women, a lot of people, especially neurodivergent folks, get all their lives. So that can be really healing to be like, oh, they listened, they heard me. I think that's absolutely powerful. And I love that you do that on the online space as well. Do you have any other tips for online focused circle groups? Anything else that you change or shift to meet that different space?
Yeah, so I encourage people who are joining online to try and treat it as if they were leaving the house. And that doesn't mean, like, if you've got children at home, they all have to leave, but try and be in a quiet space in your bedroom with the door shut, if possible. Not always possible for mothers of young children, but light a candle, put out your own altar items, tune into the sacredness of it. This isn't just a Zoom business call, there's something different here. And try not to have people in the background. So that can be quite disconcerting for others when they're sharing and there's like a partner walking behind, or kids are fine. I think we're all okay with kids observing and overhearing things. But if someone's sharing their heart out and then a partner walks past with a sandwich, it can just kind of bring you out of it a little bit. And the other thing with online, a practical tip, because as a Virgo, I just love sharing some practical things. You have to give people multiple reminders. So whereas you might do an in-person event and I send out a reminder the week before. Circle's next Sunday, here are the details again. With an online circle, I send 4 reminders. So when confirmation that they're coming, a week prior, 2 days prior, 1 hour prior. And I set that all up like at the same time, so it's automated. But I have found, even in the circles that I've run over like 6 months, I still had people forgetting. And they go, oh no, I missed circle. And it's like, oh, there's just something that happens differently with online things. It doesn't stay in our brain in quite the same way. So the more reminders, the better. So you can actually have people there. I also don't record circles for sharing with anyone unless it's like a 6-month container where that feels safe and right to do so. But if it's just a once-off full moon online circle, I'm not recording it and then sending it to someone who wasn't able to make it on the day, even if they've purchased a ticket. It's like you kind of need to be there or not. Just as if you bought a ticket to an in-person event and couldn't go, I didn't set up a phone recording that and sending it to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just a few pieces of privacy that are more important, I think, in the online space.
Especially if you're sharing things that feel raw and vulnerable, to then have someone you maybe not have met, even online, could feel, definitely not quite right. I can totally see that. And you're right. I have group calls that happen every single month, first Friday of the month, with my membership for the Suburban Witches Society. And I'll send a reminder the week before and then also an hour before. And then, still people go, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. How did I miss this? Maybe I need to do the 1-2 days before as well.
Yeah.
So that's so funny.
Something that I'm including in my in-person circles, but if I was to run one, I just haven't run it online in a while, is making it very well known that you can do whatever you need to do with your hands in this space. So this is for people that maybe are neurodivergent and they need to be able to pay attention by also doing things with their hands. So on online spaces, that might look like you can crochet, you can draw, you can doodle in your book, you can be making a watercolor at the same time, and just creating the space where everyone knows that even if someone is slightly looking down, they're still listening. We all can come at deep listening in different ways. So in my group that we're circling together for the year around the Sabbats, we're making a basket. So we're weaving. So in every sharing circle, everybody's weaving and listening at the same time, which just gives them something to focus on. But it also means that when the person is sharing, it's not like 17 eyes just looking at them. And that can feel uncomfortable. So it provides a tiny bridge of just like space between the sharer and the listener while still cultivating that deep listening.
I feel like that's how stories were traditionally shared for many, 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 centuries of life. Absolutely.
Totally.
There's a funny meme going around that's like something about, I can't believe women used to have to churn butter and they didn't even have a Bigfoot podcast to listen to. And everyone's like, well, no, because they did usually do it together with everyone, and they would be sharing, the gossip or stuff that was happening. And that's when those stories were shared through those menial tasks. Like I say menial, but I mean, they are very valued, weaving and making things and those things that take time and skill and effort. So I love that you're doing. I wish I could be closer to where you are, because basket weaving sounds so much fun. Right up my alley. But yeah, as someone who absolutely needs something to do with my hands for deep listening, I can imagine that being so freeing for me, because like I can't listen to a podcast unless I'm doing something. I have to either be driving, hanging up the washing, folding the washing, like doing something, and then I can listen. Otherwise, no, I can't do it. So that's a great addition.
That comes back to another sharing or a boundary and guideline of circle that I have, is that everything is an invitation and not an obligation. And so as a facilitator, you do have to be aware of different abilities and neurodivergency and different experiences and backgrounds and everything like that. So, when it comes to sharing, people don't have to share if they don't want to. And it doesn't need to be this like, you must do this or it's not participating. No, like just as we would in a classroom, hopefully, if we're teaching, we would teach to different abilities and experiences and make adjustments and try and be inclusive in that way. And you're not going to know everything about your circle participants, but even just naming those things, like you do what makes you feel comfortable. When I offer a meditation, I'll say things like, close your eyes down if that feels safe and right for you to do so. If not, then you can keep your eyes open and just focus on something on the floor. Just making those adjustments so people feel comfortable in their bodies and in the space is really important.
Yeah, I have. I've been to one particular circle. It was a new moon circle, and I have a recurring back issue, and it was really playing up at the time. And they did a meditation, and they asked everybody to lie down, and I could not lie, absolutely could not lie down on the floor. I could barely sit properly, and it felt very weird because there wasn't like that allowance of lie down if you can or if you feel comfortable. It was like, everybody lie down and close your eyes. And I was like, what? Excuse me, sorry, is it okay if I don't? And it felt very awkward. So I can imagine being told like, we're going to do a meditation, sit, lie, stand, however that feels comfortable for you. I would have been like, whew, I can just stay where I am, where is comfortable for my body. So that, I think, is a wonderful addition to what you're doing. I can imagine that feeling really safe for me to hear. So I love that you're doing that. Now, with your circle facilitator training that you're doing, so it's called Together and it's an online course. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was very resistant to creating it at first because I came from the belief, which I still hold, is that you do not need to have a facilitator training to be a circle facilitator, especially considering the legacy of circle is ancient and, it's all within us. And yet, modern day people like the rules. They like the structure. They like learning from A to B. And it started because I was leaving my previous town where I'd been running circles and everyone had been really enjoying them and quite sad that I was leaving and wondering, well, what are we going to do next? And I said, just someone in the group keep running them. And even though they'd sat with me for 6, 12 months, there was still a lot of resistance there. So I put my first training together and it was in person in my backyard. 10 people came along. That went really well. I did another one. It was basically all my friends and circle attendees that came to those first. And then through that, I just stopped resisting the resistance to it and said, okay, for whatever reason, we've got a lot of imposter syndrome to work through. We've got a lot of confidence issues. There's people that think there are so many rules to circles that they don't belong here, or they're going to get it wrong, or they're going to say something out of line, or they're going to offend a goddess, or they're going to do this wrong, or they're not going to be able to run rituals because rituals are for those kinds of people. Or, I could just see all of that mental gymnastics happening. And so I basically just created the course from all of the questions that arose in those 3 in-person trainings, and built it out and offered it to the world. And it was so popular that it was obviously just people were waiting and ready, because I've had over 350 people join it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been amazing from all over the world. So people are finding me and it for however they are. And people are starting circles, and that has been the goal, right? It's not just to do a course and then to sit with the information and then to talk yourself out of it for another 2 years. What I have seen is that people join together, they go through the modules. It's very encouraging. It gives you like the key pieces of information to feel confident. There's a whole session on being a trauma-informed facilitator. There's different guest speakers on different topics that I thought I was lacking in my own facilitation experience or knowledge. So I've gathered up 8 other teachers, and people are doing it and they're starting circles.
That's wonderful.
I get feedback all the time that they ran their first circle and they were really nervous, but it was wonderful. And I just know that those people that attended that circle are going to have their own experience. And I just, my goal of 10,000, I don't think I'll ever have 10,000 people join the training, but I think 10,000 people will be impacted through the circles that they attend of facilitators, and it'll just ripple out that way. And I just love that I get to be involved in that. And it all started from my backyard.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful. It's phenomenal. I can just imagine, I know that like I move states quite a lot and I'm always on the lookout for circles. But then as soon as I think, oh, I could just run one myself, there's 2 things that pop up into my mind. The first is, but then I have to find a place to do it. And what if no one comes? And then the second thing that pops up in my mind is, no, but I just want to be the person in the circle. I don't, because I'm always like, I feel like I'm always facilitating with lots of things with what I do with work. I'm like, oh, sometimes I just want to be the participant.
Totally.
So I can totally imagine that. But I think it's wonderful that you've got this place for people to go and get all those questions answered, and then also have that confidence boost as well, that sometimes you just need someone to tell you you can do it, and then you can go and do it. I think that's wonderful. So that's awesome. And with your podcast, are you sharing stories of people who have gone through your course, or what are you sharing with your podcast?
So together, the podcast is sharing rites of passage stories. So birth, death, everything in between. So I've had multiple stories of people's death stories, so mothers that have died or fathers that have died, and the way that they've been tended to at the end of their life. I've had birth stories, but I'm also broadening it to like business rite of passage stories as well, because I'm really passionate about business and motherhood.
Yes.
And so it's just it's just an excuse to talk to people. And
Yeah.
I thought, like, I get such an amazing experience of being in circle and hearing all of these wonderful stories. And there will be people that just for whatever reason won't be able to attend a circle. Maybe they live rurally and there's nothing around or whatever. And so I thought the podcast could just be a glimpse into the kind of conversations that we have in those spaces, that you might not just hear in the everyday.
Yeah, I love that. And on your business side as well, you share a lot of, I guess, behind the scenes stuff that I don't understand why, but people say it's taboo to, you're not supposed to share how much you make or how you make it or any of that. And I am totally with you on the being open about it, even just with things like my own, for example, my YouTube channel. Because people are like, oh my gosh, you have, like, I think there's like 13,000 subscribers. And they're like, whoa, that's like big. And I'm like, okay, I make $25 a month. That is the monetization. If you are thinking this is like full-time job, this is absolutely not. It's $25 a month. And that is with 4+ videos per month. Like that's a lot of work for $25. So I'm very open about that. And I get a lot of people saying like, wow, I had no idea, or I just presumed this, because no one talks about it. And I think a lot of that is sometimes embarrassment, or sometimes wanting to appear more successful than they are, or I don't know, just because no one talks about it. And same with podcasts. No one ever talks about statistics or where they're at. And I'm like, I don't know where anyone's at. And am I doing well? I don't know. No one tells me how many downloads is normal. I don't know what a normal download thing is. So I just share what I get. And I get a lot of people that are like, wow, this puts things into perspective. And I'm like, cool. This is what I've been looking for. And I think what you're doing is exactly that as well. You're showing your monthly like income and outgoing expenses and how that all comes together, and how you're getting there. And it's both inspiring and just the way you write. I think you have absolutely a way with words that is, it just does something. I think it's beautiful and magical, because your emails and everything, love them. I think it's just so freeing to have someone who's sharing the taboo, with air quotation marks, the taboo things about business. It's wonderful.
Even when I moved to my new location and I'd launched the training and that had gone really well. And so I don't know, at the time, probably 250 people had joined. And then I came to a new area, started Circle. The first one went well, but then they dwindled off. And I was having circles where I was considering whether or not I had to cancel them. And I just kept sharing that, even though I thought, does this make me look terrible? Because I've got this course about facilitating women's circles, and I'm struggling with that in-person roller coaster of events. Of one circle does really well, the next circle I'm considering canceling it. One does really well, I'm having to come up with new marketing ideas. And I just decided, no, this is exactly what someone who does the course and then starts circles is going to face. I've moved to a completely new area where I know no one. I don't have an established business here. Why wouldn't it take me a while to get these circles off the ground? That is normal. And so I just wanted to share that so that people go, oh, okay, I had 4 people in my circle. That's a win. Like, that's really incredible, because you'll build off that. And it might not be linear, but, a year of showing up and doing those circles, even when they had lower numbers, I then filled a closed group for the following year. And, but yeah, I don't know why I share the behind the scenes so much. I feel maybe I'm going through my own self-discovery and whether or not I have ADHD and potentially am autistic. And it almost feels like there's no other way I can be. And I kind of look at other people that don't want to share these things and I think, but why? What is the point of being a human and being on this planet if we're not just actually telling the truth or talking about what life is actually like? It just makes sense for me to share, especially as someone that mentors other mothers in business. I never want to be pedestaled to this place where I'm like the key expert of all things. It's like, no, I'm learning alongside you. I might be a few steps ahead. Here's how I've done it. Here's what it looks like. Yes, it's taken me 6 years to grow my business. That's totally normal. I'm also probably faster than many people. Maybe it will take you 10 years. That's normal. So just to help more people feel less unworthy. That's really that piece that so many people that I talk to in business, they think they're doing it wrong. They think they've missed out on some special class. And everybody knows all of these things, and really, who knows what's going on behind the scenes. There's just everybody has a different set of circumstances and support. Everybody's children are different. The temperaments, their sleep needs, it is all going to impact your business. So while we can't compare, I think it's nice to take inspiration from just those real stories that are happening.
Yeah. Like personally, I love reading yours because you are in a very similar life stage to me. You are a mother, you have young children. I think at one point you were homeschooling. Is that?
We homeschool, yeah.
You do still homeschool? Yeah. So like
Yeah.
that is absolutely an added pressure when you're trying to run a business from home. And whilst I don't homeschool, we do have weekly homeschool days because we need those. So young children, I'm solo parenting a lot of the time. So it felt like a good, I guess, comparison to like see not just where I'm at, but also where I could be as well. And I just think it's really good to have that transparency. And I wish we had more of that out there. And I think it's so different. And this is where there's a bit of a disconnect for me with pretty much every single friend that I have, except for one. Everyone that I have in my friendship circle, they work for a corporation, like they work for a business. And it is so wildly different when you work, like you just go to your job and you come home, in comparison to running your own business, which takes years to grow and build up and do every single job that comes with it. So when you say like, oh my God, I finally hit 30 grand for the year, and they're like, oh, are you okay? Like, that's terrible. And you're like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. Like, what do you want about? Like, it's so different, the perspective. So having other people that, online or in the circle that you can connect with in that early business years type of thing, I think is really needed and wonderful. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. It makes a big difference for me too, just connecting with other colleagues and small business owners, because there's no ride quite like entrepreneurism. Like it is very different. I've worked in the corporate space myself and been employed and had success in previous careers, but wow, it never stops in business. And that's a beautiful thing, but it can also be a consuming thing. And, I made a couple of sales on the weekend and I think it divvied up to like $300 or something. I'm stoked about every single dollar. I made $300 over the weekend. That's phenomenal. And then I've had launches where I've made thousands of dollars, but I still get excited when someone buys a $20 class because it's working. It's showing that like all of that time and effort and energy that I'm poured into my business, it's coming back to me in that financial exchange.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's really tricky, it has been tricky for me to get my head around, and my husband's constantly at me about it, is the work that I do doesn't make immediate money. Like on Friday, I was researching and I think I wrote 6,000 words of research stuff that I now have to somehow put into a script to then film. And I'm like, oh, but I didn't do anything. And he's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? You spent the whole day working, but just because there was no money in that day, it feels different. And so I've been in business now 5 years, 6 years, maybe 6 years. I can't remember. 2019 I started. 5 years. 5 years of business. And I still struggle with that concept of the work and the money at the same time coming in type of thing, because it's not an hourly thing. It's not like I get paid this much per hour or this much per day. It's just whatever the day throws at me, whatever I'm promoting, whatever's working, whatever's not working.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, I'm with you on the happy dance in the kitchen for literally every single sale.
Yeah. And anyone that joins your mailing list or anyone that listens to your podcast, all of that, it might not have a dollar figure attached to it, but it is like, that's your business working. It's wonderful when people want to engage with our work in any way, shape or form.
Absolutely. Now, if anybody wants to do your circle facilitator training, where would they find that?
They can find it on my website. So Rachael, which is Rachael rose.com.au. And it's all sprinkled throughout the website. So you won't miss it once you get to my website. And I do have a promo code for you all. I'm using the word witch. I'm embracing the word witch.
Amazing.
And anyone that uses that code at the checkout can get $100 off the training.
Which is fantastic. That is amazing. Which is fantastic. I like that. Not pun intentional. That's awesome. And what about online? Whereabouts are you showing up mostly? I know you're on Instagram. Is there anywhere else?
That's all I have capacity for.
That is easy.
Instagram and my mailing list, which I try and send weekly emails, which are different to what I share on Insta. They're more long form. They're more of that, even more transparent, because it just feels a little safer to share it in the space of inboxes. But yeah, I'm on Insta and email and my website.
Yeah, and I'll pop all of the links below. I think your Instagram is the Rachael Rose.
It is. I have deep regrets over that. But look, I'm 6 years in, and so I'm not changing it. But when people see me on the street or my friends, they say, oh, it's the Rachael Rose. Look who's coming over here. Oh, sorry.
That's totally fine. Don't worry. I get all of those, those marketing emails that random businesses cold email you. And they're like, hey, Suburban, we'd love to offer you this. And I'm like, you obviously haven't looked at any of my stuff.
Perfect. Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
they can 10 times your income by just doing something to your website.
You have a broken link. So those ones, if anything that is too Suburban, just instant delete.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing space with me and sharing your knowledge and talking all about circles, circle facilitating, and women's circles with me today. I know that there are a bunch of people who are going to definitely feel inspired to start their own, or at least find a circle to join and see what it's all about. So I think that's really wonderful. Personally, I think it's something we need more of in the world. I've seen the benefits for myself. I think more people should go. So I'm very grateful to you for the work that you do in the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you, the Rachael Rose. And we will chat to you all next time. Oh, what a wonderful breath of fresh air Rachael is. I absolutely adored chatting with her and getting her absolutely authentic wisdom shining through in every single answer. Make sure to check all of the links in the description box for this episode. Go and follow Rachael, support her, and definitely sign up for her email newsletter. It's not super frequent, but when it comes through, it is just so full of amazing wisdom. I absolutely adore it. On that same vein, are you subscribed to my newsletter? I have a weekly newsletter. It is called Witch Weekly. And to be very honest, I get a lot of amazing feedback about that newsletter. So many people respond going, I look forward to these every single week. These are my favorite thing. You're such a great writer. And you know what? Thank you. I'm a sucker for compliments, so thank you. And really, it's like behind the scenes stuff, what I'm thinking about, what's inspiring me at the moment, what's news in my industry. That one was one that got a lot of responses. So I often compile a bunch of articles that I'm finding interesting, and I'll just pass them on to you guys to go and read if you want to. Other times I give you astro forecasts. They come out once a month. So what's happening? When's the new and full moon? What planets are doing retrograde stuff in the sky? And what that means. And then in the middle of the month, you get a pick a card reading, and they're so much fun. I use a different deck every single time. And if you're a Suburban Witches Society member, you can actually request which deck I'm going to use. And if you like a specific deck, you can request that for your monthly free reading in the society too. So yes, long story short, sign up for everyone's newsletters, because newsletters are the future, in my opinion, as we move away from AI generated content. At least this way, you're getting in touch with a real person. For this season of the podcast, we are going to have weekly episodes yet again, with sometimes an interview episode interspersed with Hana Help Me episodes, interspersed with some solo episodes where I just talk on a specific topic. If you have a question for a Hana Help Me episode, please email them through to me at info@suburbanwitchery.com. And before we go, I want to challenge you, if you have never attended an in-person circle, for whatever reason, to go and look for one in your local area and give it a go. See how it feels for you. They can be absolutely groundbreaking. I hope you have a lovely day wherever you are in the world today, and I will chat to you next time.